Tuesday, it's time for Party Scoopers, but you can see by that little shot that you had on screen there, we've changed the lineup a little bit and just the order of the lineup because we have a special guest joining us right now. Of course, Craig Robinson is here representing the Republican Party. Also, we have Jeff Link here representing the Democratic Party, and you brought a guest. You brought Gary Morrow with you. Hi, Gary. Nice to have you here. Nick. And reason being, Jason, is because of all the talk of what happened this past weekend. Guess who's running for president?
I heard Hillary Clinton is going to run for president.
Did you hear this, Jeff?
It's amazing she decided to get in.
You think she's officially in? I thought she was just visiting Iowa.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yes. But apparently she's traveling from the East Coast to here to Iowa in a mystery van or something. Is that what I heard?
Some kind of van.
Some kind, and we have
Scooby.
Pictures of it because Jeff and Gary haven't seen the van yet. So we have people have sent these in saying they took pictures of the van on its way here. But here's the amazing thing: the van changes shape. On the pictures that were sent in.
More headroom in that one.
Hopefully, But if they are going to be traveling, you said, Craig, this would be a Republican van.
With the eagle. It looks a little bit more like the Republican.
But then we heard Donald Trump, he's thinking about doing the same thing. He said, well, if I'm going to travel through Iowa in a van, I need to get a van too. So he's looking at some vans, and he's going to deck them out a little bit better for his. But Trump said if he's going to take a van to Iowa, it's going to be a cool-looking one.
Hey, and don't scuff the roof liner.
Well, see, you'd have to have giant Trump on the side.
Of course you would.
If it was Donald.
But Gary, welcome to the show. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, let me just introduce Gary. I thought on the occasion of the Clinton announcement and the fact that she's going to be here the next couple days, I'd invite my friend Gary, who's the former land commissioner in Texas, and in 1998 ran for governor. Came up just a little bit short to a fellow named George W. Bush.
I heard of that guy.
Yes, and but he's also known the Clintons for a long time.
1972, they came to Texas to run the Texas McGovern campaign, and I was chairman of Young Texans for McGovern. So they were brilliant then. I think they're brilliant now.
So they were together, and they were helping, volunteering, and helping to run the campaign.
That's right. Hillary came to Texas to work for the Democratic National Committee, and she called me one night and said, "Hey, I just talked to some friends of mine from New Haven. They were at Yale Law School together." And she said, "My friend Bill Clinton and Taylor Branch are coming to Texas to work on the campaign." And that was my introduction to Bill Clinton.
Compare Texas politics to what you've seen here during, I guess, what you'd call the early caucus season.
Well, I spent a little time here because I was close friends with Tom Harkin, and I've been to I worked in the caucus for 2 weeks as a volunteer last cycle for Hillary. What I like about Iowa is it's real retail politics. I mean, you have to sit down and you can't just have one conversation. You have to have multiple conversations to get people really engaged. In Texas, normally, if you just show up, because it's so big,
they give you credit, huh?
They give you credit, and you do well in that county. In Iowa, it's not like that. You have to have real substance. You have to have the real ability to connect with people.
You have to prove yourself.
That's right. And I think Hillary's doing exactly the right thing when she talks about connecting with everyday Iowans who tend to go to Democratic caucuses.
Okay, what would you say to people that say that she's been avoiding the state of Iowa?
Well, I think there's been a set of circumstances where she hasn't spent as much time in Iowa as she has in most states. I mean, when you consider that when she and Bill ran for president the first time in '92, Tom Harkin was in the race. So she didn't get to spend that retail time in politics that she did everywhere else in the country. I mean, in Texas, the Clintons they knew everybody who was in politics because they really campaigned hard in the Texas primary, which they, of course, won. That didn't happen in '92 here because of Harkin. So I think she's catching up. She's doing some catching up, but I don't think she's avoiding Iowa. I think retail politics is her strength. I mean, remember, we like to talk about her being a Secretary of State. We like to talk about her being First Lady, but she was First Lady of Arkansas for 12 years. And I don't know how much time you spent in Arkansas, but it's a small state. It's got a lot of small town people who are very ordinary in the sense that they're fun to be with, and they're very honest and very direct, and that sounds like Iowans to me.
So, Craig, what's the Republican answer to Hillary finally saying, okay, my hat's in the ring?
Well, I don't know if there's an answer. We right now have about 12 answers in terms of how many people are probably going to get into the Republican race on our side. It was kind of interesting. Marco Rubio got in the race officially last night. Which the timing of it was interesting because the Hillary news really dominated, as one would expect, all the news coverage, and then Rubio last night. I actually think that Rubio likes the comparison of, here you have Hillary Clinton, someone who's been in the spotlight for the last, 20, 30 years, and here's this new, new generation of leadership, and I think he tried to play that up in his announcement.
It was a little bit like a tree falling in the woods, though.
I
it really
agree.
did get lost in the news.
Look, you have the media kind of falling all over themselves to cover Hillary's trip across the country in a van, which I question how smart this is. Look, no one. Is it easier to ride in a van with your friends? Look, I think that's a horrible experience. I mean, I've done some road trips, and let me tell you, I don't think she's going to be doing this very long. But heck, she should have just flown into Des Moines with that's what everyone else does. I mean,
rented a van from Hertz.
Well, yeah, rent a van from Hertz if you want to spin around town. But I think one of the big issues that she has is accessibility. And I think it's hard for her because she is a former First Lady, a former U.S. Senator. She's high profile, a former Secretary of State. And so how do you have the accessibility towards people? And I don't necessarily think one van trip and a bunch of exclusive events that aren't open to the public make her more accessible. And so that's the thing that I think in Iowa she has to overcome. I think she has to become more accessible to people so that then they can feel like they relate to her. I think the stories about no one noticing her at the Chipotle restaurant was kind of fun, but look, that's happened with every other candidate I've ever been around. And I know she's much higher profile than a lot of people, but I think the accessibility thing is what she needs to overcome. And it's a difficult balance to strike when you are someone who's been in the public eye that much. And so we'll see. I'm curious to see how these events go in the next couple days.
And I'll say, as someone who's worked in the media here for a long time, granted weather, but the media, is that there is a perception that she doesn't like Iowa and that she's going to have to overcome.
So, Gary, I want to ask you this question. You mentioned that she's going to be making a couple of different stops, but they're closed stops. They're not open to the public today and tomorrow. What do you say to that? What do you think her reasoning is beside being these closed sessions?
Well, I would assume the closed sessions are so that she would meet with ordinary Iowans. I mean, everybody in the media, everybody that's a political junkie, if it was open to the public, they'd end up being your typical stage political event. I think initially she's going to have to work very diligently, as Craig says, to be accessible to ordinary Iowans, and that's not going to be easy. And we'll see. My money's on her. She'll figure out a way to make herself accessible, and I really believe she likes Iowa.
I think there are two things. One is, this trip is the beginning, it's not the end. So I think if this is a pattern of what they're doing, they're going to overcome this accessibility issue. And just all the photos that they're tweeting out from this trip, I think, sort of goes to that. And on the issue of closed events, the idea is to have an interaction with a small group of people. As Gary said, they could have a rally at Wells Fargo Arena. She could fill it. That wouldn't be a problem for her because there's that much energy and enthusiasm. But the question is, how do you really engage Iowans? And you do that in a smaller setting. And the only way you can ensure that is to sort of limit the number of people who are there. So she's going to talk to students over in Monticello, and she's going to talk to a group. Small business people in Norwalk. I think that's a real good start to the campaign.
Gary, why does anybody put themselves through this and run for office at this level? It's just got to be brutal.
It is brutal, and you have to ask yourself that every day. But I believe that there's a certain group of people that believe public service is the highest calling. And I think Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton both believe public service is the highest calling. They've dedicated their life to it. I tell people that, in my experience, what makes Hillary click is she's a very devoted Methodist. And if you read John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist Church, he called public service the highest calling. That's what everybody ought to be called to as a Christian, is to make an impact, and the best impact was public service. So I think that's what Hillary's all about.
Well, Gary Morrow, thank you for coming over.
Yeah, thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. Nice
Jeff,
to-
thank you, sir. Craig, good job, my friend. Thank you,
sir.
buddy. It is 7:31. We'll be right back.